A series of attacks by militants on oil and gas pipelines in Nigeria's Niger Delta swamps have brought the country's oil output to a 20-year low. Nigeria's oil minister had said the government would start talks with the Niger Delta Avengers, but they have now rejected the offer of talks on their Twitter account. The militants claimed they had blown up a Chevron oil well in the delta. Meanwhile, ISIL-affiliated Amaq agency has released a video which appears to show Boko Haram fighters clashing with Niger government troops around the town of Bosso, southeastern Niger, last week. Up to 30 soldiers from Niger and 2 from Nigeria were killed in the fighting. Friday's attack was the deadliest assault in Niger by the Islamist group since April 2015. The Nigerian government denied that Boko Haram had taken over Bosso and said in a statement that the town was completely under control on Monday evening. Bosso is part of the Diffa region near Lake Chad, where Cameroon, Chad, Nigeria and Niger meet. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Let's get you the latest on this development. CCTV's Deji Badmus is joining me now from Lagos. Deji, Nigeria had decided to scale down military operations in the Niger Delta and instead dialogue with the militants. Now that the talks option seems to have hit a dead end, what follows next?
Well, it's difficult to say if the talks have actually hit a dead end because we only heard from the Niger Delta Avengers today, coming out to say they are not in any talks at all with the government. But then the government is still pressing on with the talks, and the government hasn't actually reacted to that. For instance, a lot of people had been expecting that the government was going to make an announcement and ask the military not to withdraw from the area. Fact is that the governors of the region, I'm talking about the South region now, governors of the various states of that region have asked the government to give it time to, open talks now with these militants and try to resolve this. So what the government is doing now is waiting on the governors to open talks with the militants. Some people are still optimistic that these talks will still hold and that eventually what we're seeing now might just be the storm before the calm. But we just have to wait and see how the ND, I'm talking about the Avengers now, react over the coming days. Of course, they have come out, they blew a pipeline yesterday, and they've made it clear that they are not talking with the government. But some people are still hopeful, and the government is still hopeful that the militants will come around and that some kind of formal talk now will begin, and that that we might see an end to this pipeline attacks.
Well, Deji, as you mentioned there, the militants blew up an oil pipeline yesterday. But just how serious, though, is that threat to Nigeria's oil-dependent economy if the attacks by militants in the Niger Delta are not contained?
Honestly, it's really serious. Nigeria's economy, whether we like it or not, depends on oil. It accounts for the bulk of government revenue, even though oil is not... the contribution of oil now to the country's GDP is just around 14%, but the bulk of government revenue comes from oil. And that is why the budget of this country is usually benchmarked on not just the exchange rate now, but it's also benchmarked on the price of oil and as well as the production level. So what we have now is that the production level, the budget benchmark, that's the budget production benchmark now has really gone down. Budget production benchmark was 2.2 million barrels per day. Kachuku, some time ago, I'm talking about the Minister of State for Petroleum, told us that we're doing less than 1.4 million barrels. Now, there have been a series of attacks between when he said that and now. So, there are fears that we might be doing less than 1 million barrels per day. And if that is the case, it definitely means government will not be able to implement the budget the way it is. So because less money will be coming from the government, even though the government is talking about diversifying the economy, it will still take time for that to happen. So it's a bad one for Nigeria, even though prices are going up. Fact is that if these guys do not stop the attack, it's difficult to see how the government will be able to raise the money to meet all its budget projections. Beatrice?
Well, do bring us up to speed with the other worrying militant group in Nigeria, the Boko Haram. They seem to have been making a rather strong resurgence in southeastern Niger. What do we know about their latest attack?
Well, it's quite surprising what Boko Haram has been doing in the past few days. Of course, the attack, as we all know, happened in Boso. And what we're learning now is that Chad has decided to intervene. Chad is sending around 2,000 soldiers to Niger to help check Boko Haram in that area. We understand Boko Haram is still in control of the town of Boso, and that over 50,000 persons have fled that town. But Chad is now intervening, sending 2,000 soldiers to help. The Nigerian vice president has also called on the Lake Chad Basin countries to cooperate and work together. That is what has not been happening quite effectively. So the Nigerian vice president calling on the Lake Chad countries to work together and cooperate further to check the resurgence of Boko Haram. But the general impression and the general belief here is that with Chad sending around 2,000 soldiers to that region, that the multinational joint task force now might just succeed in retaking the town of Boso now from Boko Haram in the coming days. But one of the reasons, some security analysts have explained, one of the reasons why we're seeing this is just because Boko Haram is coming under intense pressure in the Sambisa forest area, which is their stronghold. And so as they come under pressure from the Nigerian military, they are moving out and moving closer to you know, the fringes of the border now between Nigeria and Niger. And so they are trying to establish a base in Niger, and that's the reason why we are seeing these attacks. But people are pretty confident that the multinational joint task force will be able to retake Boso from Boko Haram in the coming days.
All right, Deji Badmus for us there from Lagos.